Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
When I was in 10th grade, I got into refereeing football for a little league in town. I got hired by a random booster club mom and she tells me they pay us in cash out of the snack cart money. A fancy part of town selling Voss and stuff. But hey, no problem, I was 16, getting $120 cash every Saturday sounds nice. So the owner of the league, we will call him D from here, was a generally nice guy and had a son on a team. D was a guy living all of his failed childhood through his 9-year-old kid. The season was going great except when I had to ref his games. He would get mad at any call involving his son no matter what happened. If this kid was on a line and went off to the side, we were expected not to call it. Well, I like to make things as fair as possible for kids, so I would always call it. This would set him off and he would come running from the sidelines yelling at me. I tried to talk to him multiple times, but his reply was always the same. It's my league, so it's my rules. So I moved on and just kept doing me. The season was winding down and his kid's team happened to make it into the championship game. The head coaches got to choose one referee each. D chose Doug. Doug's cool, I like Doug. And the other coach chose me. D calls me midweek telling me if there was going to be an NFL rep there to do the coin toss, evaluate the league for a sponsorship. Annoyed with his mid-game disruptions, I decided to have some petty revenge and tried to piss off D in front of the rep. On the day of the game, I show up and act just like always. Get everything set up, then call out the captains. Out comes D with his son and the other coach and his captain. We got everything started, and at first, I let the little things go. I feel giddy, but I know I have to let the kid win a bit so he really feels the burn. The score was tied with 4 minutes left when I saw an opportunity to strike. It was 4th down on their own 15. D's son was at quarterback and instead of taking the snap from center, he said, "Hike," and picked up the ball. Normally I would let this go, but it was D's kid, so I tossed my flag, expecting a 5 to 10 yard run. You could imagine I was a bit surprised when he took it all the way for an 85-yard TD. Normally I would let this go, but it was D's kid, so I tossed my flag. Expecting a 5 to 10 yard run, you could imagine I was a bit surprised when he took it all the way for an 85-yard touchdown. Everyone on their sidelines goes crazy, including D, when the other coach starts yelling, "Hold up, flag, there is a flag." I call a meeting in the middle of the field and explain what happened. D wasn't having it. He was staying surprisingly calm and he said I could either declare it as a touchdown or take off my uniform. So screw it, I quit. I'm waiting for the poster lady to pay me when she gets a call and says, "D told me not to pay you." I waited till D was available and had it out with him when he made it clear that I was paid under the table and that I could basically go get screwed. Time for some serious revenge. I talked to that NFL rep on the way out and told him what's going on and he seemed a little pissed off. Then I went ahead and gave a call to the IRS and gave them all the information I had. I forgot about it for a few weeks. Then I got a call from Doug asking if I was the one that called him in, and he explained that D had 6 other businesses that had a lot of under-the-table dealings. He ends the call by saying, "That was pretty screwed up. It was just a little league football game. It didn't have to end like this." D had a multi-million-dollar house, 2 nice cars, and a loving family. $120 screwed him out of it all. The day started off like any other. I had a few errands to run, so I headed to the local store to pick up some groceries. Little did I know that I was about to witness one of the most shocking displays of entitlement I'd ever seen. As I entered the store, I immediately noticed the bustling activity of shoppers going about their business. The aisles were filled with the sounds of carts rolling and people chatting. I began to make my way through the aisles, ticking off items from my mental shopping list as I went. And that's when I saw them, the kid in a wheelchair and the infamous Karen. The kid couldn't have been more than 15 years old, and he was navigating his way through the store with admirable determination. Karen, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. She strutted down the aisle with an air of superiority, her nose held high as if she owned the place, and when she stopped abruptly in front of the kid, I knew trouble was brewing. I watched in disbelief as the kid, lost in his own world, bumped into Karen with a gentle nudge. It was such a minor collision, barely even noticeable, but Karen reacted as if he had committed a grave offense. "Watch where you're going, you little brat," she screeched. I froze, unsure of what to do. Should I intervene? Should I try to calm the situation down? But before I could make a move, Karen reached into her bag and pulled out a can of pepper spray. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched the scene unfold before my eyes. This couldn't be happening, it's not even worth it. Surely Karen wouldn't actually use pepper spray on a disabled kid over a minor accident. But I was wrong. Dead wrong. With a swift motion, Karen aimed the pepper spray at the kid, her finger hovering over the trigger, and I held my breath waiting for the inevitable. And then out of nowhere, a voice got through the tension like a knife. "Drop the spray and step away from the kid." I turned to see a police officer standing in the next aisle over, his look fixed firmly on Karen. Relief washed over me as I realized help had arrived. But Karen, being Karen, refused to back down. She squared her shoulders and glared defiantly at the officer. "You can't tell me what to do. This kid assaulted me. I have every right to defend myself," she spat. The other officer didn't flinch. Instead, he reached for his taser, his eyes never leaving Karen's. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to drop the spray and comply with my orders. Now." But Karen wasn't having it. She raised the pepper spray in defiance, her eyes blazing with fury. And that's when the officer acted. With lightning speed, he pulled the trigger on his taser, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through Karen's body. She let out a blood-curdling scream before collapsing to the ground, like a marionette with its strings cut. I watched in stunned silence as the officer proceeded to handcuff her and read her rights. The paramedics were called, and they quickly attended to the kid, who thankfully seemed to be okay, albeit shaken. As I stood there processing the chaos that had just unfolded before my eyes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. In that moment, I realized just how fortunate we were that the officer had been there to intervene. But even more than that, I couldn't shake the feeling of disgust toward Karen and her sense of entitlement. How could someone be so callous, so selfish, as to pepper spray a disabled kid over a minor accident? As I left the store that day, my mind was still reeling from that encounter. But one thing was for certain, I would never forget the sight of that Karen getting her comeuppance, courtesy of a fearless cop who wasn't afraid to do what was right. And I made a silent promise to myself that if I ever found myself in a similar situation, I would do everything in my power to stand up against injustice and entitlement, no matter the cost. A few years ago, I lived in Germany. I wanted to spend winter holidays in my homeland, Serbia, which is not in the EU. I packed my 3 kids in the back seat. The twins were less than 2 years old, and the elder daughter was 7. I drove from Hamburg to Hungary, where I had to cross the border to enter Serbia. However, due to the holiday season, the line with cars and buses was more than 1 kilometer long. The waiting time was several hours, and there was no other option but to wait patiently and move slowly forward 5 meters at a time. As the time went by, my kids got restless. I had to feed them, change their diapers, and calm them down. Any parent who travels with toddlers knows the situation well. As I was focused on them, I did not notice that 2 buses went through the border and that I had to move my car forward for some 30 to 40 meters. 3 cars behind me used this opportunity to slip by and get in front of me. By the way, such a thing is not allowed before a customs border. I noticed it and got out of my car. I said to them that their conduct wasn't fair. I had 3 small kids in my car and I wasn't using that situation to my advantage. And if I could wait patiently for my turn, so could they. But they all ignored me. I didn't tell them that this conduct is illegal, as I thought that everyone knew this. There were several signs that warned the drivers not to drive around and pass the car in front of them. I did not have time or energy to argue with them, so I got back into my car and thought, if I can wait for 6 hours, then I can also wait for 6.5 hours. Some 15 minutes later, two customs officers patrolled down the line of cars. For some reason unknown to me, probably routine, I cannot tell, they looked into each car, and when they saw my toddlers in the back seat, one of them told me that they would immediately open the second gate to speed things up. Hungarians are great, aren't they? 3 drivers from those cars in front of me heard this. They were outside having a smoke and rushed back to their driver's seats. I knew what was coming. I started the engine and let the 3 of them block my way, cut me off and park at the front of the second newly opened gate. I slowly left the first line and parked my car behind them. I had a gut feeling that my sister Karma, the witch of witches, was about to act. Those 2 customs officers saw what happened and let the 3 cars through the gate, but they also told them to park their cars at the lots inside the customs border. Anyone who ever crossed the Hungarian/Serbian border knows what that means. They were going to search all 3 cars and their passengers and baggage thoroughly, which meant hours and hours of waiting, answering endless questions, unpacking, packing, and all sorts of unknowing stuff. When I arrived at the gate, the customs officers greeted me and asked for our passports. "What's the purpose of your trip?" one of them asked. I told him I want my kids to spend this Christmas with their grandparents in Serbia. He stamped our passports, greeted me and wished me safe travel and Merry Christmas. As a Christmas gift for my kids, he promised that he'd keep the 3 cars at the customs border for the next 6 hours at least, and that they would have to pay a really nasty fine for their misdemeanor. The second customs officer said, "I hope you enjoyed your stay in Hungary, ma'am." "Oh yes, I did, sir. I surely did." So, I've had a friend since college who's a great guy. I love him to pieces, but I've occasionally considered ending the friendship because his wife is so jarringly dumb. For the life of me, I don't know what he gets from her. Okay, I do. She's one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in real life, but even still, I don't know how he does it. She's sweet, she means well, but there are sandwiches more intellectually stimulating. A while back, I had a friend visiting, Camden, and she was dropping her kids by to hang out with me. I invited her to stay for a bite to eat because, yes, she is exquisitely dumb, but she's perfectly friendly. Camden's been trying to break into acting, and he recently had a bit part on a TV medical drama. So I brought it up saying, Camden just recently had a small role as a doctor on this show. She went, "Ah, that's so exciting. Congratulations. It must not be easy to get a job there. So what kind of doctor are you?" And he explained, "Oh, it's a very minor role. I didn't get a specialty or anything. I didn't even get a name." And she laughed and went, "Well, we all feel that way when we first start, regardless of what job. Just keep working hard, and you'll get all that stuff over time. But don't sell yourself short. It's not easy to be a doctor." And he took the compliment and went into how he went about playing the role, the body language he tried to adopt for the intensive care unit, and that sort of stuff. Then she cut him off and went, "Actually, you know what? If you don't mind, my son has actually had this oblong cyst developing on the small of his back for a couple of weeks now. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a look." So we both laughed thinking she was joking, and I was impressed with her uncharacteristically high-level joke. But then she actually started to call her son over. It's just like her to start a funny joke and then take it way too far. Camden, confused and weirded out by the whole thing, started saying, "Oh no, they didn't teach us any medical stuff for the part. I can't, help you with this." I jumped in and changed the subject, and she left shortly after. I'd long since given up on trying to explain to her why some jokes are funny and others are not. So I thought I'll let it be, even though she seemed kind of miffed when she left. Later she came back to pick her kids up, and by then Camden had gone home. As she was leaving, she remarked, "You know, it was very rude of your friend not to at least look at my son's cyst. It would have taken him like 10 seconds. I hate how doctors think they are above helping anyone unless they are getting a check. Didn't they take an oath to always help anyone who needs medical advice or something? So, as I processed the pure bitterness in her voice, I realized she genuinely and truly thought Camden was a medical doctor. So convinced I must be misunderstanding her, I further reiterated, No, he's an actor. He played a doctor. On that show. You've seen the show. It's not a small production, it's like Grey's Anatomy or House. Everyone knows it. And even angrier now, she said, Of course I have. I know all about it. It's one of the best hospitals in the country. Why do you think they put it on TV? Being in a spotlight like that, you'd think he'd try and be a little more professional with people. That's all I'm saying. The surreal mix of entitlement and illusion in her statement left me dumbstruck, and I decided I must be misinterpreting this somehow. Because there was no way any grown adult who votes, drives, works, and has kids of her own is that stupid, not even her. So I just let her leave rather than risk offending her or embarrassing myself. As soon as she was gone, I called my friend, her husband, to try and catch him before she was home. I relayed the whole series of events to him, and his response, Oh, that? Yeah, it's a problem, but it's not entirely her fault. Oftentimes, those shows use stories ripped from the headlines of the actual news, So you can see why she gets mixed up sometimes. She bumped into Camden at my anniversary party not too long later and asked him, with genuine concern, if a character on a show who'd been in an accident again on the show was recovering well. He tried telling her in plainer terms, I don't work there, I'm not a doctor. I just played one bet one time. And she said she was so sorry to hear he'd been let go. And where was he working now? So if you wonder how our country ended up where we are, know that she has a bachelor's degree from an accredited college and holds a job with several subordinates and partial responsibility over our city's water supply. So advocate for education reform whenever you can and enjoy these twilight years of the great American experiment. I, female 48, have known Pat, female 48 as well for decades. As far as I can remember, she was fixated on having 5 children and a picket fence dream life. I slowly cut ties with her in college because she was an opportunist and I didn't trust her. She's both manipulative and forceful. Her idea of cute rubs me the wrong way. Pat likes to walk like a penguin when she wants to elicit pity, and she usually does this when she wants to evoke the underdog narrative. I've never seen someone act so despicable and ridiculous at the same time. I moved on with my life, happily got rid of her for years, and Pat eventually found me on Facebook. I accepted her friend request out of politeness. Pat has become the epitome of a permissive mother. Her 5 kids do as they please and she never calls them out. She tried to force a relationship between me and her daughters and made them call me auntie. Pat tried to drop them at my house uninvited. Her phone calls were insistent and she tried to monopolize my time and she began to show up at my job. I created some boundaries, so she tried to find loopholes. It was a nightmare. My husband and I hosted a party for the community center, not a real name, new members. The community center is actually a very informal initiative, and my husband and I mainly serve the homeless population. We prefer to help strangers instead of catering to potentially narcissistic acquaintances. We don't mind lending a hand, but we have encountered truly dishonest choosing beggars. There are other services, like one of the members who helps women get their wedding and prom dresses for free. The community center location headquarters is actually a farm owned by an elderly couple. There is a barn, a venue, and a very nice green field with an artificial lake and some fowl. They charge for the use of their facilities, weddings, and so on, but not for community-oriented stuff. Pat had always been salty at her husband for demanding that she go back to work after baby number 3. In the meantime, he worked 3 jobs. She demanded he get her pregnant to fulfill her dream of having 5 kids. He didn't agree, because he was already nearly 45 and felt like he might never be able to retire. She got away with bringing new babies into this world anyway. Her fascination with being pregnant comes from all the attention she gets. She had at least 1 miscarriage in between each kid. Pat latched onto our group. She never missed any of our activities. I hated having her in my house, but it was an open invitation that included virtually everyone, and she was very active as an event organizer. I didn't like the way her kids behaved. We have a designated area for parties and entertainment, but her kids ended up inside my bedroom. We ended up having to keep watch of them and enjoyed zero of our own party. I called her days later to get my point across regarding their overall behavior, but she completely cut me off and began talking about herself and said her kids wanted to come visit again and use our pool. I never answered that. I didn't want to say no, I will not have your brat over. She also called me as summer who was approaching specifically to let me know her middle daughter was bored and wanted to spend a week at our home. I politely declined, citing that me and my husband have to work and cannot entertain guests. Pat paid no heed. Her kid called me on the weekend, called me auntie, and attempted to coax me by saying Mom says you invited me to spend summer with you. I quickly clarified and offered an explanation to avoid hurting a kid's self-esteem. Never mind, her daughter just hung up on me. Pat's Facebook also showed some red flags. Some cryptic rants here and there were visible, along with friends' comments and complaints on how she asked a particular person to watch her kids only for a couple of hours and ended up leaving them all day. Another of her friends criticized their girls' night out because Pat had just asked them to be patient and wait until she could pay back some money that she owed them, yet she had money to spend on Friday night outings. I thought those very public comments on very private matters were more like a cry of lost patience. Unpleasant things began to happen, like the time she volunteered to wrap the Xmas presents for underprivileged kids. We all wanted to create a mix of less costly gifts with really nice ones. Surprisingly, some nice and eye-catching toys and games went missing but turned up under her Christmas tree, courtesy of her mother-in-law's Facebook posts. No one could prove anything, but it was hate-inducing. Or the time my daughter called me in tears to pick her up after she attended Pat's daughter's birthday, Casey. My daughter had been ignored all night because she didn't gift her the expensive gaming stuff Casey particularly demanded. My daughter did ask, but I said no. We will buy her a very nice and thoughtful present according to her taste. So when I went to pick her up, my daughter was sitting alone in the living room while Casey and her friends stayed outside. Stories about Pat and her family multiplied. The owners at the farm community center decided to keep their gates locked unless they had guests or events because Pat got into the habit of driving in whenever she pleased, and it was either her kids screaming and disturbing ongoing weddings, throwing rocks at the Coena Lake, or harassing the geese in the yard. Or how she stiffed another soccer mom with a lunch bell and then pulled a struggling financial card. Or how other parents hated her because she created unnecessary hostile competition. When my daughter turned 13, I allowed her to wear my grandma's ring. It is not an expensive piece of jewelry, but it's vintage and girls nowadays wanna look bohemian. My granny gave it to me when I became a teenager, so I passed it on to my kid so she could wear it on her birth week. It was weird that she became quiet and distracted after that. She also didn't want to go to school and my husband and I became suspicious. She never opened up, and my other kids had no clue. We went to her school, but her teachers assured us nothing had changed in her environment. My husband and I suspected she was being bullied, but our kid gave us no tools to support her. My kid is very sunny and very compassionate. She has never had any problems with other kids. I called her best friend's mom, Natalie, my kid's BFF, told us what was going on. Casey, Pat's eldest, and my daughter had become close. I knew this, I wasn't too thrilled. I found the age, Casey was 17, gap not exactly inappropriate, but I'd rather see my daughter spend time with friends in the same age range. Casey is very beautiful and a gifted student. She's also very conceited. To make the story short, she asked my daughter if she could try on the ring and refused to give it back. She later claimed that she lost it but would look for it, so my daughter was distraught. My daughter kept asking for her ring and as a result, Casey shunned her and spread the word that my kid was trying to steal her ring. Some kids at school took Casey's side, so now Casey just wore my kid's jewelry to school like nothing happened. If that doesn't qualify as taunting, I don't know what does. My guilt comes from not being able to get my daughter to open up and feel safe telling me the truth. I talked to her and she burst into tears. I was both pained as a mother and furious that some teenage witch was doing this under our noses. I went straight to Pat's car after school and I asked to talk as Casey was about to go in. So I grabbed Casey's hand and asked to see her jewelry. Casey froze and she tried to make a fist, so I became relentless. Casey yelled "Mom," and Pat struggled to get out of the car. I slid the ring off. Casey has tiny hands and wore the ring on her index finger. First, Pat yelled at me after I confronted her with the engraving on a band, my grandma's maiden name. She argued it was loaned to her daughter by my kid, and she said she bought it. I paid no heed. I did warn them that I knew Casey had become an abusive friend to my daughter. Pat called me to tell me off. She said she was trying to raise an assertive young woman, and I had just messed that up by being overbearing. She never apologized for her thief of a child. Pat's husband, Hank, is what can be described as a doormat. Pat wore him down to a knot. He had no choice but to obey her to keep the peace. She was a bully who actively withdrew affection when he didn't follow her wishes, even in public. So she got kids number 4 and number 5 after a relentless campaign that included leaving him for 2 months. Her pregnancies were a nuisance because she expected to be treated like the only lady who has ever been pregnant. She strolled around in a wheelchair almost immediately after getting pregnant, and she would get very sick on weekends, so her kids were often sent to friends and family so that she could rest. Pat systematically bullied Hank. She would leave town and take the kids with her. Poor Hank would look distraught, drinking on his Porsche, or just looking really lonely. This is how she got out the hook and was able to leave her job. Hank had virtually no voice, so he struggled to keep the marriage together. Everyone liked him but hated her equally. Hank loved to talk to other people but seemed concerned that Pat would be upset. Over time, according to my husband, Hank began to show signs of depression and mental distress. Our friend Lena runs the wedding/prom dress initiative. It's not complicated. Dresses are sourced from donations, eBay, trunk shows, and so on. Unusually beautiful dresses are retained so that more than one bride gets to wear them. In some cases, a bride will pay $50, but most of the time, the dresses are donated to the bride. Pat was involved in this. Lena kept her in because they never had any issues and her task was limited to just shipping the dresses out. Pat decided to renew her vows, and her Pridezilla Karenzilla attitude became the icing on the cake. For starters, she bullied another couple into giving up their wedding date at the farm because she needed her renewal to match her exact wedding date. They were not impressed with her harassment, so they booked another venue. As a result, the farm owners were pissed because Pat was already costing them money after she had successfully negotiated a cut in the rate because she couldn't afford it but would repay by doing maintenance work around the venue. She never made good on her word. Pat became attached to a particular dress that was already assigned to another bride. Lena made it clear that she would need to pay for her own dress, so Pat played it cool and shipped the wrong gown instead. She was adamant that it was the right dress, despite all the notes on Leah's agenda. The other bride was truly gracious about it. She was obviously disappointed but never made a scene. What bothered me most is that I picked that dress and bought it for $40 at a garage sale, not my money, Leah's money, and it was a vintage dress, ankle length, white with lots of lace and a huge bargain. Again, when confronted, Pat did a Casey and used that "this is mine" strategy. We felt so bad for the other bride that we did our best to get her something nice to wear. The other bride was a true fighter. She had pulled out of welfare, earned her high school diploma, and was working to get on her feet by trying to earn a certificate as an acrylic nail technician. So her reward was to have some Karen steal her dress. Pat never admitted to messing up, but just by the fact that she claimed it was her dress We knew. Lena never allowed her in her warehouse again. Their last phone fight ended with Pat bringing up the other pride's past, like it mattered. Now this conversation is over, it's my dress, and you are mistaken. That was weeks before the other pride's wedding. Pat went all out on her wedding decor. She spent way too much. She hired a caterer for some food, mainly mimosas and appetizers. But the wedding invitation included a request for specific dishes for her Sunday brunch wedding. Either she ran out of banquet money or was on a complete moocher mode. I picture the bingwing walking upon practically asking everyone to supply her wedding reception grub, and I cringe. There is nothing wrong with potluck weddings. In fact, they can be a nice addition to a very cozy and family-oriented wedding reception. But don't you need to at least be close to your guests in order to ask for such a thing? Even I got an invitation. I told everyone I wasn't going because I was very uncomfortable being told what to bring and was probably expected to give them a cash gift. On top of that, some of the older ladies in our group agreed. Some said they would not decline in advance because she's a bully and they did not want a confrontation. Lena called me the night before Pat's free wedding. Lena was there to close a Saturday night bingo and Pat was awfully friendly. But that's what she does whenever things are going her way. Lena peeked into the garment bag and saw the exact same dress while Pat was caught up supervising the wedding decoration. The thing with Karens is that they expect everyone to suck it up or make their dreams come true, or they simply underestimate everyone and think we are all fools. Lena is a very straightforward person with a "so, sue me" attitude. She told me she would just ruin the dress. After all, it was hers, so she could do whatever she wanted. If Pat wanted to take legal action and should things get ugly, she needed to prove ownership. However, the dress was the same. The marks inside the hem and the tags were the same. Even the tag numbers that were punched to identify each dress for logistics purposes matched. Pat had the dress altered with some extra beading and dyed to a deep cream color, but it was obviously the same garment. Lena and I snuck in before the venue was closed for the night. All brides are allowed to stay in a small bedroom for a small charge, so that they don't need to drive in on their wedding day. Honestly, the makeshift chapel was gorgeous. I don't know how she paid for it, but it was full of flowers and presumptuous details. I naively brought in some ink to spill on a dress, but Lena said she wanted something more awful, like a nasty surprise. Ink would be too obvious, and if she saw it ahead, she may be able to snag another gown from somewhere. Now the ideal thing was to have her trust the dress was fine, so Lena locked herself in a bathroom stall and completely cut out the bag panel. She patiently put it back on its hanger and zipped the bag. We left through the emergency door with the back of the dress stuffed inside Lena's purse. I completely hate people, Pat and her kid, who target and steal from anyone they calculate to be in a weaker position. The wedding was scheduled at 9 a.m. Pat called me at 7 a.m. but I ignored her calls. I picked up by 8 a.m., both curious and wondering if she suspected anything. Pat was frantic. She was crying that her dress was missing by half, and I purposely made her explain. Being annoyingly dense and continually interrupting like she does, and stalling the conversation. She asked me if I could lend her my wedding dress. I said no, sorry. She then asked me if I would help her get a dress. I was satisfied to remind her that the town's bridal shops were closed on Sunday and the others that would open were almost an hour away. The farm is already almost 1 hour away from our town. If Pat could get a shop to rent a dress, she would need to try the dress on and get it steamed. Even if the dress was ready to wear, it would easily take more than 2 hours round trip. She tried to ask me to go pick out a dress. Who would pay for this? Even if a shop were open and brought her a dress, it would add to the cost. Also, these shops open at 10 or 9:30 at earliest. By the time they got to her, it would be time to wrap up the wedding because she needed to clear the venue by 12 for the next event. She broke down and mumbled some stupid stuff I didn't understand. So Pat hung up on me and called Lena instead. She asked Lena to bring her anything she had available. Lena and I ended up delivering the most outdated, moss-smelling, oversized dress. Pat's disappointment was a mix between angry and emotional. She also tried to wear her knee-length silk bridal slip as a wedding dress, but it was too obvious and it really looked cheap. She tried to get her daughter to give her her own dress to wear with an open back zipper due to fitting issues, but Casey refused, asking if she was supposed to attend the wedding naked. She got a point, plus Casey is petite. The dress needed a petticoat to plump up the skirt, which wasn't available. So it dragged all over the floor and Pat had to keep pulling it up. Pat walked down the aisle with one hand on her bouquet and another one grabbing her dress. The dress looked limp and weird with the arrangements of pins. They didn't show. They caused the sleeves and neckline to pucker into messy rims. She spent the ceremony looking uncomfortable and out of place. Very few people attended, but that was not part of any revenge. That was just how people reacted to her entitled attitude. The dress looked awful. The reception portion of the wedding had all this princely decoration. A very nice cake and a bridezilla with a dress from hell. I didn't stay, but I was told she was so disappointed she spent her wedding sulking. There was no dance, no actual speech. She had to change into a shirt and leggings because the dress was too uncomfortable. Everyone talked about how Pat put up her flip-flops and walked around aimlessly until she ordered the ushers to start folding up the chairs within 1 hour of the reception. So she practically kicked everyone out and the cake was never cut. Pat wasn't the same after this. She was not as loud and avoided everyone. I think she was disappointed that nobody ran to her rescue. Not even her family who came from out of town. Her husband finally cracked under all the pressure and sought some help. He was slaving away and coming home to clean the house while Pat used her kids as an excuse to spend like crazy. Hank also had to do kid homework because Pat never had time or never had patience. She also refused to go to a part-time job so her kids could attend an after-school and get help with her school stuff. Therapy seemed to help Hank because the last time Pat left with her kids, he didn't seem distraught. He would be riding his bicycle and could be seen more relaxed while mowing his lawn. Hank told my husband that he had contemplated suicide after their third kid. When Pat returned, he maintained a routine but was interested in going out by himself and doing things for himself. We began to see Pat alone all the time. Hank was seen less and less in the same car and eventually moved in with his parents. He filed for divorce on the grounds of emotional cruelty, and I don't think he won. Instead, I'm not sure of this because this is what I was told. There was some sort of a settlement or agreement that she would not get close or interact with him unless it has to do with the kids. I also don't know if Pat even actually suspected who/what happened to her dress. She slowly pulled away from the community center and became less active in social gatherings. Pat also removed me from her Facebook as well as mostly everyone else from school and the center. Edit. Regarding my kid, there were no prior incidents. Pat, her family, and my family were not friends. I did see her often. After Casey's birthday incident, there were no additional situations until what happened with the ring. After that, Casey played the OP treated me badly card because I physically removed the ring from her hands. But I honestly don't feel I need to protect her emotions. Edit number 2. Thanks to everyone who took their time to read. Thanks for the nice and kind comments and even the naysayers or aggressive ones. I understand we are all different and some situations can seem enraging or so difficult, we instantly want to fix it by reacting or by reproaching. It's human nature to instantly go for, this is what should have happened instead. I appreciate your input. Even the mocking, raging, and scrutinizing ones show me indignation, and this is good. No one has yet said I love what Pat did, and that shows we are still striving for a more fair and balanced life. Even the snide comments show me this has gone under your skin, and I try not to judge. The lovely and supportive Redditors who have shown kindness are also very appreciated.